It was a quiet morning in the little town of Maplebrook, where the sun peeked gently over the rolling hills and brushed the rooftops with soft golden light. The air smelled of blooming daisies, and the chirping of sparrows filled the peaceful street where a small house stood, bright blue shutters, a white picket fence, and a front garden bursting with colors. Inside that cheerful home lived a curious girl named Lucy, an 8-year-old dreamer with messy brown hair, sparkling eyes, and a heart full of wonder. Lucy loved stories more than anything. Every night she would lie in bed and imagine worlds far away, castles floating among clouds, dragons that spoke kindly, and forests that whispered secrets. Her imagination painted pictures brighter than any book she owned. Yet sometimes she felt sad because she could never make those images come alive on paper. Her drawings looked plain and messy, never quite capturing what she saw in her mind. One rainy afternoon, when thunder rumbled softly in the distance and the window panes shimmered with raindrops, Lucy sat by her desk, staring at her blank notebook. Her pencils were dull, her eraser worn down, and her heart a little tired. She wanted to draw something beautiful, something that could tell a story, but every time she tried, the pictures didn't feel alive. As the rain drummed gently outside, she sighed and leaned her head on her arms. Suddenly, she noticed a faint shimmer from the corner of her room. It was coming from the small wooden box that had belonged to her grandmother, an old artist who used to draw enchanting paintings and tell stories that seemed to dance in the air. Lucy had never opened that box before. It had been sitting quietly on her shelf for months, gathering dust and mystery. Curiosity fluttered inside her like a bird. Slowly, she stood up and walked toward it. The box was carved with tiny stars and swirling patterns. When she touched it, she felt a warm tingle rush through her fingers. The lid creaked open, and inside lay a single pencil. It was unlike any she had ever seen. Its surface shimmered faintly, changing colors like a rainbow caught in sunlight. The wood was smooth, and at its tip glowed a faint golden spark. Lucy lifted it carefully, almost afraid it might vanish. The moment she held it, she felt something shift, as though the air around her became lighter, alive with possibility. Her heart raced. She sat down, placed her notebook before her, and pressed the pencil's tip to the page. The moment the graphite touched paper, the spark brightened. She drew a simple flower, but then, before her astonished eyes, the drawing began to move. The petals unfurled, the leaves shimmered, and within seconds, a small, glowing flower grew from the paper's surface. It was real, glowing softly, smelling faintly of roses and morning dew. Lucy gasped. Her eyes widened as she reached out to touch it. It was warm, alive, and perfectly real. She laughed in delight. She had always imagined things, but now she could bring them to life. The pencil in her hand pulsed gently, almost like it was happy too. Over the next few hours, Lucy's room became a world of wonders. She drew a butterfly and it fluttered around her head. She drew a tiny puppy and it wagged its tail, jumping happily in her lap. She drew a tiny sun in the corner of her wall, and the whole room filled with golden light. It was magic, pure, breathtaking magic. She stayed up late into the night, drawing and creating. But with every creation, she noticed something curious. The pencil seemed to glow a little dimmer. She didn't worry at first, too enchanted by her new world. She drew a small castle, and suddenly her desk transformed into a miniature kingdom filled with tiny guards and towers of paper. She drew a little girl, a friend, who came alive and waved at her with a gentle smile. Lucy felt happier than ever before. But soon, she realized that every creation required a piece of her imagination. She could feel it each time she drew something big. A part of her mind felt lighter, emptier. She wondered if that was how the pencil worked. It turned imagination into reality, but at the cost of the dream itself. That night, as she looked around her room, surrounded by glowing drawings and playful creatures, she felt both joy and a strange, quiet ache. She had created so much beauty, yet her head felt a little quieter than usual. She put the pencil down, tucked the notebook under her pillow, and drifted into sleep surrounded by her living drawings. The next morning, Lucy woke up to find something extraordinary. Her drawings had vanished. The castle, the animals, even the butterfly, all gone. The room looked just as it had before. The magic pencil lay quietly on the desk, its shimmer faint but steady. She felt a pang of sadness. Maybe magic can't last forever, she thought, but deep inside she felt the pencil wasn't done yet. Over the following days, Lucy began to understand the true power of imagination. She started to use the pencil to tell stories, drawing scenes that connected together. One page showed a forest, the next a mountain, then a small village. Each drawing came alive and told her a piece of a bigger story. The pencil guided her as though it knew where the story wanted to go. Lucy found herself lost in a magical journey of her own making. She created a brave fox who wanted to find a rainbow that touched the ground. She drew a talking tree that gave advice to travelers. She drew rivers, stars, and even the wind. The magic pencil became her partner, helping her weave stories that felt more real than the world around her. Days turned into weeks, and Lucy's notebook became a world, her world. Each story she drew was filled with kindness, courage, and color. But there was one mystery she still didn't understand. Where did the magic pencil come from, and why had it chosen her? One evening, as the sunset painted the sky pink and orange, Lucy flipped to the last page of her notebook. For the first time, she saw something she hadn't drawn. There, written in glowing golden letters, were the words, "Imagination is the seed of creation. The pencil chooses those who dream with their hearts." Her eyes widened. The pencil had a purpose. It wasn't just for drawing pretty things. It existed to help her tell stories that could inspire others. She realized that her grandmother, who had loved art and storytelling, must have known this magic too. Maybe she had left the pencil for Lucy to continue her legacy. Lucy smiled softly and held the pencil close. The next morning, she took her notebook to school. She began sharing her stories with her friends, showing them how imagination could build worlds even without magic. Her stories inspired others to draw, write, and dream. The magic pencil glowed warmly in her bag as if proud of her. As the days passed, Lucy learned that the truest magic wasn't in the pencil, it was in her heart, her mind, and her ability to imagine. The pencil was only a guide, helping her see the magic she already had within. And so began Lucy's grand journey, not just of drawing, but of storytelling, creation, and the boundless joy of imagination. The following weeks brought sunlight, laughter, and a growing sense of wonder into Lucy's life. The world outside her window seemed brighter now, as if it too could feel the quiet hum of magic she carried with her. She had grown into the habit of sitting at her little wooden desk every evening, opening her notebook and letting the pencil lead her somewhere new. Each stroke was like a whisper, a promise of another adventure waiting just beneath the surface of imagination. Her mother often peeked into her room and smiled at the sight Lucy leaning over her notebook, face glowing with joy, the faint golden shimmer of the pencil lighting her hands. The girl who once struggled to express herself now painted entire worlds without words. Her thoughts danced freely, turning into rivers, mountains, skis, and stories that came alive between the pages. One afternoon, the weather shifted suddenly. Clouds rolled over Maplebrook, dark and heavy, until the first raindrops splashed against Lucy's window. She loved rainy days, they made her imagination bloom. The sound of rain was like music, and that day it played softly in rhythm with her heartbeat. She sat by the window, opened a fresh page, and began to draw. The first thing she drew was a raindrop, then another, and another. Before she knew it, her page was covered with hundreds of tiny silver blue drops, but something strange happened. When she looked closer, she saw reflections inside each raindrop. Each one showed a different image: forests, oceans, stars, even faraway lands she'd never seen. It was as though the pencil had painted tiny windows into other worlds. Her heart raced. She gently touched one of the drawings, and suddenly she felt a rush of cool air. The room shimmered. The walls dissolved into mist, and when the fog cleared, Lucy found herself standing in a forest where rain fell like diamonds. The trees were enormous, their trunks glowing faintly as though they held light within. The air smelled like honey and fresh leaves. Her shoes splashed softly in puddles that sparkled like mirrors. The notebook was still in her hand, and the pencil glowed with calm golden light. She realized she had entered her own drawing. The pencil hadn't just created images, it had opened a doorway. For a moment she stood in awe, her heart thudding with excitement. Then, remembering how her stories often had heroes, she whispered to herself that maybe this time she was the hero. She wandered deeper into the forest. Every step seemed to tell a story. She saw a little cottage shaped like a teapot, smoke curling from its spout. She saw mushrooms that glowed softly in the dim light, forming a winding path that led toward a small hill. And when she reached the top, she saw a lake so still it looked like a mirror. On its surface danced hundreds of paper boats, each one carrying tiny glowing letters. Lucy knelt beside the lake and reached for one of the boats. When her finger touched it, she heard a faint voice, not from outside but inside her mind. It was telling a story, a gentle, beautiful voice reciting words of courage and kindness. The boat drifted away and she understood. Each boat held a story, perhaps created by others who had imagined before her. The lake was a collection of dreams. She smiled and dipped her pencil into the water. The glow of gold and blue mixed together, and suddenly the entire lake rippled with light. The boats lifted into the air like fireflies and swirled around her, whispering stories from other hearts other times. It was overwhelming, magical, yet deeply emotional. For the first time, Lucy realized she wasn't the only dreamer. Imagination connected everyone across time, across worlds. That evening, Lucy decided to write down the story she had just lived. Her pencil danced across the page and her words flowed easily. She wrote about imagination, kindness, light, and the power of creating something that makes others feel. She didn't need magic to do it, just her heart and her belief. When she finished, she added one final line at the bottom of the page: "Stories live forever when they're shared." She set her pencil aside, feeling a quiet glow of pride. That night, as she drifted off to sleep, she dreamed of stars swirling into shapes, each one forming a story that floated gently into the sky. Somewhere in a world of imagination, the pencil rested beside the great book of imagination, glowing softly, waiting for the next dreamer to find it.